Hey, what's up guys? Asad here, and this is my review of the Nexus 6. Now, I've had this phone for about a year now, so I've had a good idea of what is good and what is bad about this phone. And hopefully this will give you a better decision on whether you should buy this phone or think about considering another phone. Now, to start off, the design of the Nexus 6 is completely based off the Motorola phone. So it's a Motorola phone. It's got that signature sort of design with the speakers at the back, the curved back. It has a dimple on the back right here. I've actually placed a G-brand skin on mine just to help with the grip. Because the back of the Nexus 6 is quite smooth and slippery. So it's really not great in terms of holding it correctly. It does slip around quite a lot, and it does spin around on tables and slide off surfaces. So that is something to consider. I put the skin on right here. That has definitely improved the grip and the feeling in the hand as well. It's great now. So if you do consider buying the Nexus 6, I would definitely recommend trying a skin on or a case on. Personally, I wouldn't do a case because the phone is quite thick. Already it's very thick, and it's a very big phone, and a case would make it even thicker. So a skin is kind of good halfway measure. Continuing on with the design, it's completely metal all around. It has a metal frame that goes around the entire front and back of the phone. And durability wise, like, this phone has been absolutely great. I've dropped this maybe, I don't know, couple of dozen times over the last year that I've been using it, and it's held up really well. I recently put on this screen protector on it, this glass screen protector, just because it helps with it has an oleophobic coating, and the coating on the screen is worn off, and that's why I put this on, because it helps keep fingerprints away. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people consider the Nexus 6 is because of its size, which can be a good and bad thing. Now, the good thing about the Nexus 6, it has a giant 5.96-inch display. It's a Quad HD display, so it's 2560 by 1440. It's an incredible display. It's also an AMOLED display, so it has really good color saturation. The blacks are almost completely pitch black. It has really good detail. It's one of the best displays. Not the best, I would say, but one of the best. It's getting there into the top 5, I would definitely say. Now, one of the bad things about the display is it doesn't get very bright normally. Outdoor visibility is especially a problem for me, especially on really, really sunny days, where other phones that I've had work just fine. But this is something to consider if you use this phone a lot outside, because the brightness is not really that great. It does suffer a little bit from being dim, and it's a very glossy screen as well, so there's a lot of reflection going on, and that mixed in with the low brightness doesn't really help with outdoor visibility. Now, another thing that I want to really talk about is the camera. Nexus phones have never really had very good cameras. They do get better every year, but they're never really on par with a lot of high-end flagship phones, like phones from Samsung or Apple. Now, this year they have really tried to make the camera very good. They had a 13 megapixel camera. It has a ring diffusing flash on it, and it also has optical image stabilization. And from my experience of using the camera, I'd say it's one of the best cameras I can use. Now, most of the photos I take are taken with HDR plus on, and I would definitely say if you plan to use this camera, keep the HDR plus on, because it really does help with freezing action really well. It helps getting a really good amount of dynamic range. There's a very little noise, and it's incredible in low light conditions, especially with HDR plus on. It just brightens everything up. It reduces noise to the point where it's hard to even tell at first. It's sometimes I've never really had any problem in low light because of this camera. It's a really great camera for taking pictures. Now, for taking videos, it's a slightly different story. It will shoot 4K video, so that's obviously great. That's something that we expect from phones nowadays, high-end phones nowadays. But the one thing I really want to say is that the autofocus when taking video is really, really bad. It tends to hunt for focus a lot. Anytime you move the camera or change subjects, it will do this sort of focus hunting, sort of jitteriness that you'll end up seeing a lot, and there's not a smooth transition between focus like you find on iPhones or Samsung phones, which is very disappointing because if the video qualities were just as good as the photo qualities, I would say this is one of the best cameras that you can get on a phone. It's honestly, it's such a disappointment, but I guess that's something to consider. Now, I was also hoping that Google would fix these problems with a software update, but a year on later, these problems still persist, so it's just something that I have had to deal with. It's just not that great, in my opinion. Now, the Nexus 6 also has a 2.1 megapixel camera up at the top, and I would describe the photos from the front camera as okay. In medium to good lighting, you can get some really good pictures out of the phone, but in anywhere where there's sort of low lighting or not really good lighting at all, there's high contrast, the pictures kind of tend to get very noisy and very grainy quickly. It's not great. It's an okay camera if you want to take loads of selfies. But if you really do take a lot of selfies, then I would recommend looking elsewhere because the camera quality on the front camera is just okay, I would say. Now, one excellent feature that I love on the Nexus 6 is the fact that it has dual front-facing speakers, both one on the top and one on the bottom. Not like the Moto X, which only has a bottom speaker, while the other one's only for calls. This is great because it means that you can have really good stereo sound coming from you get really immersive sound, you get really loud, it's really clear, it's really vibrant, really immerses you in what you're watching and what you're listening to. Now, that combined with the huge screen makes for some of the best media and viewing experiences that I've ever seen on a phone. It just seems like you have a small tablet in your hand, and you can watch YouTube videos on this thing comfortably. I've gone 2-3 hours watching entire movies on this phone with the speakers, and I've never had any problem at all. I never felt the need to go to a tablet or a computer to view what I'm watching already. So that's one of the best features I think about the Nexus 6. Now, this size phone is obviously very polarizing because it's a 6-inch phone. It's a very huge phone. Everyone I know pretty much always comments on the fact that how big this phone is. So it's definitely something that you have to get used to. It took me quite a while to get used to the size of the phone. But if you do get used to it and you want a big phone and you're used to having big phones, this is definitely a great option because I love this thing for the media experience on it. I'm spending all my time watching YouTube videos, Netflix, Amazon Prime, you name it. I'll be able to watch it on this thing comfortably, and I'll enjoy every minute of it. Now, because this phone is a Nexus, it is first in line for software updates. It's currently running the latest version of Android 5.1.1 Lollipop, and it will get Android Marshmallow very soon, and will be first in line for that. So that's one of the great things about all Nexus devices, is that they're usually first in line and always very quick to get updates. The Nexus phones aren't bogged down by any sort of Android skins like TouchWiz that you might find on Samsung phones or HTC Sense on HTC phones. It's just completely stock and the way Google has intended it to be. And performance on this phone has been great so far. It had a lot of hiccups at the start of the year with Android 5.0, but some updates later, and it seems to have fixed a lot of these problems. I've never noticed it stuttering or slowing down. Games play great on this phone. And even a year later, it's still, I'd say, one of the best phones right now. I mean, it has a Snapdragon 805 in it. That's a quad-core chip. It's really powerful. It has 3 gigs of RAM on it. That's also a ridiculous amount of RAM. It has a massive battery. And that combined with the stock Android experience means that this phone is going to be performing great for at least the next year or two, if not more. And it's just a great phone to use. I've loved using it. It has had some performance hiccups, but those seem to have been fixed. And Google is quite keen, I think, on making sure that this runs smooth and performs great. Now, while we're still on the subject of software, Google didn't really do anything to optimize the Android experience on the Nexus 6 for the big screen. It's kind of basically just the same blown up experience that you would find on 4-inch phones, on the Nexus 5 and the Nexus 4. And that's kind of disappointing. I really wanted some kind of split screen multitasking, especially since you have such a huge screen on this phone. I really wanted Google to have some kind of optimizations. And apart from some of their own apps like, for example, the settings app, you can have 2 row columns now. But apart from little things like this, there wasn't really any optimizations that you would expect on something like Galaxy Note phones from Samsung, some LG phones, and it's really kind of disappointing. I really wanted there to be a big screen kind of optimizations going on. Apart from, these extra row of icons, there's nothing really happening here. I'm really liking Android Lollipop on the Nexus 6 now. It has all these animations, all these kind of sort of white material design kind of elements to it. There's kind of animations all over the place. And those animations tend to be really smooth a lot of the time. So you can expect great performance out of this phone. And it's a pleasure to use this phone. It's quite smooth a lot of the time. It's very fast. It's very fluid. There's a lot of animations all over the place again, but they add to the whole experience. Now, the battery life of the Nexus 6 is what I would describe as okay. Physically, it has a very big battery inside it. It has a 3,220 milliamp hour battery, which is actually, I think, about twice the size of some of the iPhone 5 and 5S. I think about twice the size of that or even more. And with that kind of battery size, you would expect the phone to have really good battery life, especially with like all the optimizations that come with Android Lollipop, a lot of the Snapdragon 805 being a power efficient chip. But in my opinion, it doesn't really have that great battery life for a phone of this size relative to its size. I'm getting between, I would say, 3 to 3.5 hours of screen on time with my typical days of usage. Now that's between me taking the phone off the charge at 9 in the morning and then putting it back on charge at 11 p.m. at night. And by that time, I have maybe about 10, 15, maybe 20% battery life, which is not really great for, again, such a huge phone, especially since people buy a lot of huge phones for the immense battery life that they offer, and this doesn't really offer that. I was more hoping that this would have, I'd say, a day and a half worth of usage, maybe even 2 days of usage, but I'm slightly disappointed. I think this really shows that Google may not have the best of optimizations in terms of preserving the battery life, and I think that the large Quad HD screen really does suck a lot of the battery out of it as well. So battery life I would describe as average. It's okay. It'll definitely get you through a day. I would just class myself as a heavy user. I'm spending a lot of my time playing games and watching YouTube videos. And if you can live with the fact that it only gets you through about a day or so, then that's absolutely fine. A good feature that I do like about this phone is the fact that it does support Qualcomm's Quick Charge 2.0. So that basically means you can get about 6 hours of usage with 15-minute charge. Now, I can't confirm these numbers, but I can say definitely that this is a very quick charging phone. I can put this in to my charger for about 15, 20, 25 minutes and get 30, 40, 50% of my battery back. So if you are a heavy user and you have a few minutes, you can always just take your quick charger with you, or you can buy another one, plug it in for a few minutes, and you'll get a huge chunk of your battery back. So that is definitely something I would say is a good benefit. I would like a bigger battery and better battery life in general, so I wouldn't have to even charge it, but it's okay. It's a nice trade-off, I guess. There's also a power saving mode built into the Nexus 6, which is a first for stock Android to have. But to be honest, I really didn't like using it a lot of the times, because when you turn on power saving mode, it makes all the animations really choppy, and there's a ton of lag going on, a ton of performance issues, and it's almost hard to use it, especially when it dips into the last 5% of the phone's battery, where and all the animations completely go. And it's just a super laggy and super inconvenient phone to use. That's my big problem with the battery life on this phone, is that when you activate power saving mode, it really is it becomes a terrible phone to use, because it's just so choppy, so slow. It takes minutes to open simple apps and do simple tasks that you almost avoid using it, and you'd rather just put it on the charger as quickly as possible. Anyway, guys, that's been a quick review of the Nexus 6. Tell me what your thoughts are. Leave a comment in the description. Tell me what you think about this phone. Do you think this is still worth buying? Are you looking forward to the new Android versions? Are you looking forward to new Nexuses? Do you have other phones that you think would be better? Feel free to tell me your thoughts in the comments section below, and I will see you guys in the next video.